Aledrin sat at his desk, the flickering candlelight casting long shadows across the ancient tomes that filled the dim chamber. The air was thick with the scent of old parchment and dust, a smell he had grown accustomed to over the years. His fingers, stained with ink, carefully turned the brittle pages of a manuscript recently unearthed in the deepest vaults of the library. It was a rare find, written in an ancient script he had not seen in decades, Dwarven, but unlike any he had studied before. The text seemed almost alive in his hands, the words flowing like whispers, pulling him deeper into the forgotten past. His heart raced as he deciphered the passages. They spoke of Erebor, the lonely mountain, and the lineage of kings who once ruled there. But it was the mention of the rune stone of Durin that caught his breath. The manuscript hinted at a lost tomb beneath the mountain, one where a dark secret was buried, something that had been hidden from the world for generations. Aledrin's pulse quickened as he realized the magnitude of his discovery. This was no ordinary artifact. The rune stone, believed to be a myth for centuries, was tied to the very heart of Erebor's greatness and its tragic fall. Its power could unlock the deepest secrets of the Dwarven kings, perhaps even reveal the cause of their ruin. He sat back in his chair, the weight of the discovery settling over him. The lonely mountain, once a bastion of Dwarven strength, lay in ruin, a shadow of its former glory. The Dwarves, once proud and mighty, had scattered, and their legacy had become nothing more than a whisper in the winds of time. But now, Aledrin felt a deep connection to that history. The desire to restore the honor of the Dwarven people burned within him. To uncover the rune stone was not only a chance to discover the past, but to reclaim the lost glory of the Dwarves. His fingers traced the manuscript's final words, and a sense of dread began to seep into his thoughts. What was the cost of this knowledge? What dark forces lay buried with the rune stone? He could not answer these questions, but one thing was certain. The past had called to him, and he would answer. "I must go," he whispered to the empty room, as if the mountains themselves were listening. He gathered the manuscript and the other papers he had copied from it, carefully tucking them into a satchel. He rose to his feet and glanced out of the window, where the setting sun cast long shadows over the distant hills. The journey to Erebor would not be easy. The path was fraught with danger, and the mountain held secrets that had remained untouched for centuries. But he could not turn back now. His heart ached with the weight of the Dwarven legacy, and the need to uncover the rune stone was too great to ignore. As he prepared for the journey, a knock at the door startled him from his thoughts. The heavy wood creaked as the door swung open, revealing a tall figure in the doorway. It was Diane, a seasoned dwarf warrior, his face hard and weathered by years of battle. His gaze swept the room before locking onto Aledrin. "I heard the news," Diane said, his voice gruff, but filled filled with concern. You're planning to journey to Erebor, aren't you? Aledrin nodded, his eyes not leaving the manuscript. Yes, the rune stone. I found something. Something that could change everything for our people. Diane stepped into the room, closing the door behind him. I knew this day would come. The mountain calls to you, just as it calls to every dwarf who still remembers what we were. Aledrin looked up at his old friend, a flicker of doubt passing through his heart. Diane had served in many battles, his hands hardened by war, his heart scarred by the loss of Erebor. He was a pragmatist, a man who believed in strength and survival above all else. You know the dangers, Diane, Aledrin said softly. There are things in Erebor that we are not meant to uncover. The past holds dark secrets, and some of them may be better left undisturbed. Diane's eyes darkened, his gaze steady. The past is dead, Aledrin. What matters now is what we do with what's left of it. We can either keep running from it, or we can face it head on. I choose to face it. Aledrin met his friend's gaze, feeling the weight of his words. The path he had chosen was one of uncertainty, and yet he knew Diane was right. If he was to uncover the truth, he would need allies, loyal companions who would stand beside him, no matter what dangers lay ahead. I'm glad you'll come with me, Aledrin said, a slight smile tugging at the corner of his lips. But we'll need more than just the two of us. Diane raised an eyebrow. Who else do you have in mind? Before Aledrin could answer, another figure appeared in the doorway, Luthiel, an elf with a deep and complex connection to Erebor. Her lithe form glided into the room, her silver hair cascading over her shoulders. She had once been a friend to the Dwarves of Erebor, a time long before the fall, and her ties to the mountain ran deep. I overheard, she said, her voice soft yet commanding. I will join you. Aledrin regarded her with a mixture of surprise and apprehension. Luthiel had been distant for years, her heart scarred by the dwarven downfall. Her presence was both a gift and a complication. I did not expect you to come, Aledrin said cautiously. Luthiel's gaze softened, and she stepped closer to the desk, her eyes now focused on the manuscript. Erebor's history is my history, Aledrin. The dwarves' fate is tied to mine. I cannot stand idly by when I know what might be waiting in that mountain. The rune stone, it calls to us all. Her words echoed in the quiet room, and Aledrin felt the gravity of the situation settle in his chest. Together, they would seek the rune stone and uncover the truths that lay hidden beneath Erebor's broken halls. You understand the risks, Aledrin said. The mountain is dangerous, and the past we are seeking might be more than we can bear. Luthiel's gaze remained steady. We must face it, for the sake of the dwarves and for ourselves. There is no turning back. Aledrin took a deep breath and nodded. The weight of his decision was heavy, but it was now irreversible. The path ahead was fraught with danger, but there was no other choice. Erebor's legacy very future of Middle-earth could hinge on what they uncovered. With his companions by his side, Eledrin gathered his belongings and prepared to leave. The road to Erebor would be long, but the journey to uncover the rune stone and the dark secrets hidden within the mountain was only just beginning. As they stepped into the twilight, the vast expanse of Eriador stretching before them, Eledrin looked back one last time at the library. There, in the quiet darkness, the past waited for them to come and unearth its buried truths. With a final glance toward the horizon, Eledrin took his first step toward Erebor, his heart filled with both resolve and uncertainty. The call of the mountain had come, and he would answer. Eledrin's heart beat heavily in his chest as he stood before the tomb's massive stone door, the ancient carvings on its surface casting long shadows in the dim light. His fingers traced the intricate markings, ancient dwarven runes that whispered of glory, of tragedy, and of a time long past. The echoes of his ancestors seemed to call to him from beyond the stone, their voices both a plea and a warning. Behind him, Diane stood watch, his grim face carved with the experience of countless battles. The dwarf warrior had seen much in his life, but nothing quite like this. Luthiel, silent as ever, stood at the edge of the chamber, her pale eyes reflecting the uncertainty that hung thick in the air. She, too, understood the weight of this discovery. Erebor had always been more than just a kingdom to them. It was a symbol of the dwarves' pride and fall. And now they were delving into the heart of that legacy, searching for answers that could change the course of their future. Are you ready? Diane's voice broke the silence, rough and steady as ever. He seemed more wary of this place than any other they had encountered on their journey. The dark presence of Erebor seemed to cling to everything here, a weight in the very stone beneath their feet. Eledrin's breath was shallow as he turned to face his companions. I don't know if we'll ever be ready, he replied, his voice heavy with the burden of what they sought. But we must continue. The prophecy, it spoke of Erebor rising again, but only through great sacrifice. Luthiel stepped forward, her presence like a whisper of the past. That is the cost of knowledge, Eledrin. We've all been drawn here for a reason. Whatever we find in these tombs will bind us to it, for better or for worse. The tomb's door groaned as Eledrin pushed against it, the stone grinding against stone with an eerie reverberation. A gust of stale air escaped from within, the remnants of ages long gone. Steeling himself, Eledrin led the way, his torch casting flickering shadows along the walls as they descended deeper into the heart of Erebor. Inside, the passage was narrow, the walls lined with dusty stone and forgotten relics, broken weapons, chipped shields, and banners long faded. It was clear that no one had walked these halls in many years. Yet there was something else here, something that made the air feel thick, charged with a dark presence. Eledrin felt it in his bones, the weight of centuries of He knew it was here, the rune stone of Durin, the artifact that could unlock the dwarves' greatest secrets and possibly their greatest doom. As they ventured deeper, they came upon a grand chamber. The floor was scattered with the remains of dwarven warriors, their bodies long turned to dust, their weapons left behind. At the far end of the chamber, a massive stone pedestal stood, covered in ancient runes and dust. There, resting upon the pedestal, was the rune stone. Eledrin felt his pulse quicken. The stone was unlike anything he had ever seen, its surface etched with intricate designs, shimmering faintly as though it held the very essence of Erebor itself within it. He stepped forward, reaching out a trembling hand to touch it, but as his fingers brushed the surface, a voice, low and insistent, whispered in his mind. The price is great, Eledrin. The mountain will rise again, but only at a cost. He recoiled, his heart racing. The voice was not his own. It was ancient, filled with a power that had long been forgotten. He turned to his companions, who had heard nothing but the silence of the chamber. Did you hear that? He asked, his voice faltering. Luthiel's eyes narrowed, her gaze moving to the rune stone with an unsettling recognition. I heard nothing, but I feel its pull. This is the legacy of Erebor, the legacy of Durin's line. But there is darkness in it. Diane's face was set in grim lines, his eyes wary as he glanced around. We've come too far to turn back now. But be warned, Eledrin, this stone is not just a relic. It is a key to something greater. And there are those who would use it for far darker purposes. As if summoned by Diane's words, the ground trembled beneath their feet. From the shadows at the far side of the chamber, figures emerged, dark shapes, hooded and cloaked in tattered robes. Their eyes burned with a malevolent light, and as they drew closer, the air grew heavy, suffused with a sense of foreboding. We've been watching you, a voice hissed, emerging from the lead figure. It was a voice Eledrin recognized, though he had hoped never to hear it again. The elf who stood before them was no stranger. It was Thalion, a corrupted elf once allied with the dwarves of Erebor, now twisted by power and greed. His presence here confirmed what Eledrin had feared. Others sought the rune stone. Thalion's eyes gleamed with a cruel, twisted desire. The rune stone is mine, he said, his voice smooth, yet laced with venom. You have uncovered what was never meant to be found. You, Eledrin, will lead me to it. And when I have it, Erebor will rise again, not as a kingdom of dwarves, but as a kingdom of power, a kingdom under my rule. Eledrin's heart thundered in his chest. He knew that Thalion's lust for power had driven him far down a dark path. But to twist Erebor's legacy for his own gain was a betrayal of everything it had stood for. The weight of the decision before him was immense. What would it cost to stop Thalion? And could he truly destroy the rune stone, knowing the vast knowledge it contained? Diane stepped forward, his hand on the hilt of his sword. chamber belongs to its people and to its legacy, not to you. Thalion laughed, a hollow sound that echoed through the chamber. You think you can stop me, Diane. The stone's power is mine to wield, and now that you found it, you will not leave this place alive. The dark figures moved forward, drawing weapons from the shadows. The chamber, once silent and forgotten, now thrummed with the promise of violence. Aledrin's heart pounded as the choice he had feared loomed ever closer: fight or surrender the stone. His eyes flicked to the rune stone, its power radiating in the air like an unspoken promise. Stay back, all of you, Aledrin shouted, his voice cracking. The rune stone's power is not ours to wield. But Thalion's followers were relentless, and as they closed in, Aledrin felt the rune stone's pull, an overwhelming force that threatened to consume him. He could feel the ancient kings of Erebor stirring within the stone, their voices whispering in his mind. The mountain will rise again, they whispered. But at what cost? In that moment, Aledrin knew the truth. The rune stone was not merely a relic. It was a symbol of Erebor's dark legacy, and its power could either destroy or save Middle-earth. But it was a burden he could not carry alone. Luthiel, Diane, he whispered, his voice heavy with the weight of the decision before him. We must stop him. For Erebor. For our people. The battle began in earnest. Aledrin gripped his sword, but his thoughts were elsewhere. The rune stone was the key, and its fate rested in his hands. He would either destroy it, or let the darkness of Erebor rise once more. And as Thalion's followers surged forward, the chamber filled with the sound of steel clashing, and the mountain itself seemed to stir, as though it were alive, waiting for its destiny to be fulfilled. The story had reached its breaking point. The air within the tomb grew thick, oppressive, as though the weight of ages pressed down upon Aledrin's shoulders. He could feel it, deep within his chest, the presence of something ancient, something that had not been disturbed for millennia. His breath caught in his throat as the echoes of forgotten kings seemed to whisper through the stone, and his eyes were drawn to the pedestal at the far end of the chamber. There, resting upon it, was the rune stone of Durin. Its surface gleamed faintly in the torchlight, but there was something dark and foreboding about it. The runes etched upon its face shimmered as if alive, pulsing with a power older than Erebor itself. Aledrin reached out, his hand trembling as it hovered above the stone. The knowledge it promised to unlock was within his grasp, but so too was the danger. His ancestors' secrets lay before him, but at what cost? What are you waiting for? Diane's voice broke through Aledrin's thoughts, firm and impatient. It's here, Aledrin, the truth. Take it, and we can finally restore the dwarves' lost glory. Aledrin hesitated, his gaze shifting from the stone to his companions. Diane stood a few paces behind him, his arms crossed, his expression unreadable. The dwarf warrior was as steadfast as ever, his belief in the mission unwavering. He had always been the pragmatist, the one to act when others hesitated. Luthiel, too, stood in the chamber, but her eyes were not on the rune stone. Instead, she stared at Eledrin, her gaze a mixture of understanding and apprehension. Her long history with Erebor, tangled with betrayal and a deep-seated yearning for redemption, seemed to weigh heavily upon her. She had not spoken since they entered the tomb, but her silence was deafening. "You know what this stone means," Eledrin murmured, his voice low, a thread of doubt creeping in. "It's not just a relic. It's tied to the fate of Erebor. The prophecy." His words trailed off as the weight of the prophecy pressed down on him. He had learned of it from the ancient manuscript, the one that had led them to this place. It spoke of Erebor's rise, its glory returning, but only through sacrifice. The mountain would stir again, but it would come at a terrible cost. Eledrin feared that the truth would not be what he expected. The legacy of the Dwarves was a double-edged sword, and the rune stone might hold the key to both their salvation and their doom. Luthiel stepped forward, her voice breaking the silence that had settled over them. "Eledrin," she said softly, her tone heavy with the weight of centuries. "This stone, it's not just power, it's a reminder of what happened to those who sought to wield it. We cannot undo the past, no matter how much we wish it." Eledrin turned to face her, the struggle within him evident in his eyes. He had always respected Luthiel, but her words stirred a sense of fear in him that he could not shake. The elves had their own history with Erebor, one that had ended in betrayal. The grief in her voice was not just for the dwarves, but for something deeper, something personal. "I know," Eledrin said, his voice tinged with the weight of his own inner conflict, "but I can't ignore what I've uncovered. The rune stone, it's part of us, part of our history. I don't know if I can destroy it." Diane's voice cut through the tension like a blade. "It's a weapon, Eledrin, a tool of power, no more, no less. If we leave it here, someone else will come for it. And it won't be for the good of Erebor. I can promise you that. The stone must be used, or it will be lost." The words stung, but Eledrin knew there was truth in them. The legacy of Erebor had been lost once. Would it be lost again? His gaze returned to the rune stone, its glow beckoning him, drawing him in like a moth to a flame. He could feel the ancient kings of Erebor calling to him through it, urging him to claim what was rightfully his. But the warning was just as strong, a warning that the stone's power came with a price. As if summoned by his thoughts, a low rumble echoed through the chamber. Eledrin looked up, his heart pounding in his chest. A shadow seemed to shift in the corners of his vision, and then footsteps. Heavy, deliberate. They were not alone. Before anyone could react, the shadows in the corners of the chamber seemed to take form. Figures cloaked in dark robes, their faces hidden in shadow, emerged from the darkness. Their eyes glowed faintly with an unnatural light, and Eledrin could feel the air grow cold charged with a malevolent energy. Diane drew his sword, stepping in front of Eledrin, his stance defensive. "We are not alone," he muttered, his voice grim. "Thalion's followers. I knew we couldn't trust them." Eledrin's pulse quickened. "Thalion," he whispered. He had feared this moment. The elf who had once been a friend of Erebor, now twisted by greed and power. He had sought the rune stone for years, and now it seemed his followers had found them first. The leader of the dark figures stepped forward, his face hidden beneath a hood. His voice rang out, cold and commanding. "Eledrin," he said, the name sounding like a curse on his lips. "You've done well to come this far, but the rune stone belongs to Thalion, and you will not leave with it. You will hand it over." Eledrin's heart hammered in his chest as he stepped back, his hand instinctively reaching for the rune stone. But as his fingers brushed its surface, a flash of light exploded from it, blinding him for a moment. The air crackled with power, and the figures before him staggered, their forms writhing in the energy that poured from the stone. "You do not understand," Eledrin said, his voice shaking but resolute. "This stone is not for you. You seek to control Erebor's legacy, but it will destroy you. All of you." The figure's laugh was hollow, empty of humanity. "You think you can stop us, Eledrin? You are but a child playing with forces far beyond your control. The rune stone's power is ours to command, and with it, Erebor will rise once again, this time under our rule." The tension in the air thickened as the followers of Thalion advanced, their eyes burning with dark intent. Eledrin felt the weight of their gaze, but something else stirred within him, a deep, primordial feeling. The stone, once a symbol of his ancestors' strength, had become a weapon he could not allow to fall into Thalion's hands. Diane stepped forward, his sword raised. "We will not let you take it," he growled, his voice filled with the rage of a dwarf who had seen his homeland fall. The figure raised a hand, and with a flick of his fingers, the chamber shuddered. A wave of dark energy surged toward Diane, knocking him back. The force of it sent Eledrin stumbling, but his mind was clear now.